Hey community, it's Pastor Brett with today's daily Bible reading. We're going to look at a long passage today from 2 Chronicles chapter 30. We're going to actually look at 20 verses, and it tells the story of, under the leadership of the prophet Hezekiah, God reminding his people to celebrate the Passover. This is after a time in exile and a time just of unfaithfulness where many of God's people were no longer remembering his works through this really such a meaningful and important and central aspect of their faith as this celebration together. And so God says, I care about the kind of parties that you throw. I want you to throw some celebrations that remember my story of grace in your life. So let's look together, buckle up for 20 verses here, but I think we'll see the payoff as we kind of work through it at the end. So let's begin in verse 1. Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah and also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh, inviting them to come to the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to the Lord, the God of Israel. The king and his officials and the whole assembly in Jerusalem decided to celebrate Passover in the second month. They had not been able to celebrate it at the regular time because not enough priests had consecrated themselves and the people had not assembled in Jerusalem. The plan seemed right both to the king and the whole assembly. They decided to send a proclamation throughout Israel from Beersheba to Dan, calling the people to come to Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to the Lord, the God of Israel. It had not been celebrated in large numbers according to what was written. At the king's command, couriers went throughout all of Israel and Judah with letters from the king and his officials, which read, "People of Israel, return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, that he may return to you who are left, who have escaped from the hand of the kings of Assyria. Do not be like your parents, your fellow Israelites, who were unfaithful to the Lord, the God of their ancestors, so that he made them an object of horror, as you see. Do not be stiff-necked as your ancestors were. Submit to the Lord. Come to his sanctuary, which he has consecrated forever. Serve the Lord your God, so that his fierce anger will turn away from you. If you return to the Lord, then your fellow Israelites and your children will be shown compassion by their captors and will return to this land. For the Lord your God is gracious and compassionate, and he will not turn his face from you if you return to him." The couriers went out from town to town in Ephraim and Manasseh as far as Zerubbabel, but people scorned and ridiculed them. Nevertheless, some from Asher, Manasseh, Zebulun humbled themselves and went to Jerusalem. Also in Judah, the hand of God was on the people to give them the unity of mind to carry out what the king and his officials had ordered, following the word of the Lord. A very large crowd of people assembled in Jerusalem to celebrate the festival of unleavened bread in the second month. They removed the altars in Jerusalem and cleared away the incense altars and threw them in the Kidron Valley. They slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the second month, and the priests and the Levites were ashamed, and they consecrated themselves and brought burnt offerings to the temple of the Lord. Then they took up their regular positions as prescribed in the law of Moses, the man of God. The priests splashed against the altar the blood handed to them by the Levites. And since many in the crowd had not consecrated themselves, the Levites had to kill the Passover lamb for all those who were not ceremonially clean or could not consecrate the lambs to the Lord. Although most of the many people who came from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, Zebulun had not purified themselves, yet they ate the Passover, contrary to what was written. But Hezekiah prayed for them, saying, "May the Lord, who is good, pardon everyone who sets their hearts on seeking God. The Lord, the God of their ancestors, even if they are not clean according to the rules of the sanctuary." And the Lord heard Hezekiah and healed the people. Now, I know that was a lot. There's a lot going on in that story, but a couple of key takeaways Remember, God's people had not been following the word of the Lord according to celebrating this Passover. The Passover was a remembrance, we know, of how God had rescued his people with a mighty arm, right? He had rescued them in his power and his grace from slavery in Egypt and brought them to the promised land. Well, now some of them are still living in the promised land. Some of them have been taken out into exile. And the reality is they had no longer been prioritizing the celebration. Why celebrate when times are hard? Why celebrate when God doesn't seem like he's faithful? Why celebrate when our families have been ripped apart? There's a lot of reason that the people of God in that moment had to ignore the celebration, to ignore the Passover. But what I want us to pick up on is a couple of things here that Hezekiah points out. One is, even if we haven't done it right in the past, there is always time to begin to set apart in our celebrations God and his grace to us, and to remember that. We don't have to have this sterling track record in the past. So let me take that to us. Maybe there are ways that you wish you celebrated Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter differently with your family, and you said, well, we never really prioritized that tradition, or we never really did that as a family, and it doesn't have a lot of religious significance. It's never too late to begin to integrate that into your life. But it's not just about those Christmas and Easter type of holidays. The reality of this is, where are times in your story, in your family story, where you could pause to celebrate, to have a party that remembers God's grace to you? Maybe it's every year at your anniversary. It's not just the spouses, the husband, the wife, they get together and they have a party. Maybe sometime around that time you throw a party with your whole family and your extended family to just celebrate God's grace in your lives. Maybe it's remembering baptisms. Maybe it is celebrating special events or recoveries or redemptions. Like, whatever it is, the first thing is, it's never too late to get started. It's never too late to celebrate the story of God's grace in your life. Call those who are near, say, we're throwing a barbecue, we're coming together, and in that time, tell the story. Tell the story of what God did for you. Pray and celebrate. The second thing I want us to pick up from this story is that the reality was they did not even have, the Passover was to be followed by very specific rules and rituals and laws. And as it says here in the text, they didn't even have the ability to follow all of those laws correctly. They couldn't do it at the right time. They didn't have the right priests who were consecrated. Many of the people who were celebrating, they could not, they weren't ceremonially clean, so technically they weren't supposed to partake. And yet, Hezekiah prayed, and they did the best that they could do with what they had. In a way, not to circumvent the law, but to try to honor God, even though circumstances were less than perfect. I think there's something for us in that. Sometimes when we celebrate, we're waiting for circumstances to be perfect. We want to have everything just right, and it may never happen, right? The point is, God honors the heart. If our heart is to celebrate him, I believe he honors that. And so I don't think you need to wait till have everything just right, till you have everything picked up in your house, till you get the new patio done in the backyard, till every single person you invite can be there. My encouragement to you is just go, just start. And it may be as simple as saying, look, we're getting a bunch of friends together, and we're going to celebrate God's grace by going even and eating outside of the patio at In-N-Out, right? And something as simple as that, that can be a time where you get together. And I think the important thing is to tell the story of God's grace. And we saw there the last line that because Hezekiah prayed out like this, he prayed for his people, and he asked that God would heal their land and heal them, even though everything wasn't perfect. And I believe that is God's grace to us. As we come together, as we find different ways to celebrate his grace in our story and our place in his grander story of redemption, I believe he is honored, and I believe that you will see good things in your family, good things in your life, because you're beginning to center your rhythms Center your calendar, center your week-to-week experiences around that story. I think it'll be a blessing for you. It'll be a blessing if you involve your kids and your grandkids, nieces and nephews. It'll be a blessing if you do something in your neighborhood and you're celebrating it with your neighbors, whatever it looks like. Details don't have to be perfect. It's the heart. It's the heart that says, I want to honor God for what he's done in my life. So your assignment today is to go out and throw a party. Go meet with some friends at In-N-Out, have a barbecue in your backyard, get together a feast with all the fixins and trimmings, whatever it might look like for you. Throw a party, but the party isn't about the party. The party isn't about the food. The party is a way to celebrate God's grace in your life. Our God loves a good party because our God is full of grace. All right, guys, have a great week. Can't wait to talk to you real soon.